Hello everyone and welcome back to roguelite gaming. Today we are going to take a look at Aura of Worlds. This roguelite platformer promises fun and creative gameplay in an ever-changing randomly generated environment. Whether it can deliver on this promise is the question we will try to answer today. Aura of Worlds is available on Steam for €9.99 or your regional equivalent. Before we go into the review, it should be mentioned I got the game for free from the developers. When going through the list of games that were releasing this week, I was honestly baffled by the number of games being released that look good. But to be honest, Aura Worlds was probably the least impressive of them. So let's see whether it can overcome this disadvantage and get a recommendation. And, as usual, we will start with the most important part, the gameplay. At its core, Aura Worlds is your typical 2D platformer with a lot of combat, plenty of variability in the enemies, environments, and different approaches to actually getting to the end of the levels. Each playthrough starts with a choice. One that might seem very simple, yet is quite profound. The choice of equipment. You get to choose from 4 different sets of equipment that are completely random. Each of the choices has one weapon and one ability or a secondary weapon as an option. The weapons can be generally classified as either melee or ranged weapons. The secondaries have a pretty big range of what they can actually be, starting with your basic stuff like a shield or an invisibility potion, go through a few secondary weapons like boomerangs or grenades, and end up with really cool stuff like the ability to multi-jump or even a grapple to traverse the levels in creative ways. Plus, if you just don't know what to choose, there's always an option just to get 2 random items. Once you choose your starting equipment, you get put in one of the few areas you can battle through. Each has its own theme, like the Grotto of Guidance being your typical guidance, or the Gnarled Gardens being filled with plant-based enemies. And your goal is to get through the levels of the area. And once you do that, you pick another area and you go through that. Maybe there is some overarching story, but I certainly haven't been able to find it. Throughout your journey, you will be forced to battle many enemies. These range from generic blob monsters, go through skeleton warriors, and end up with huge bosses you need to be tactical about defeating. The enemy variety is quite decent, a lot of different enemies in each level forcing you to think before every encounter, as you can die quite quickly if you aren't careful. The bosses are also nice. Each area has its own boss with different abilities. Apart from the enemies, you will also need to deal with the environment, as the levels are just filled with traps. It is a very good idea to go slowly and make sure you are destroying all of the traps from range if you have that option. Then, every now and then, the level will force you just to go quickly, as the level will get filled with poisonous gas or lava, and well, it's not a very good idea to stay in those for a long time. But to be honest, combat is probably the weakest point of Aura of Worlds. It just doesn't feel impactful. And that's even considering the fact that each of your attacks has a knockback effect. I just feel the enemies have a bit too much health and thus take too long to kill, making it feel like you're using a dull knife to cut through steel. The best way to actually deal with the enemies is often to use the environment, or just to ignore them, jump on their heads to briefly stun them and run past them. But sometimes the random generator creates a choke point and you've got no other choice than to stay there for a few dozen seconds and fight the monsters. But altogether, the gameplay is okay. It's not world-shattering, but it takes the best mechanic and tries to use them to their best. Sometimes it works well, like with the environmental challenges. Sometimes it works to a lesser degree, like with the combat. I'm hoping the devs will see this and slightly lower the health boost of the enemies, giving you a bit more impactful feeling when battling them. Okay, that's enough about the gameplay. It's time to take a look at Aura's graphics. and as you can see from the video, it is pixel art styled. And again, it's decent. I've certainly seen better pixel art, but I've also seen worse, and also made much worse when I was bored. It just seems to lack a bit of detail. I don't know why. Sometimes it just looks great, especially the bosses. But for example, your character just seems like he hadn't had enough care given to him. Luckily, great games aren't made by their graphics. But a bit more care certainly wouldn't have been a bad thing. Another part of how the game builds its atmosphere is the music and sound effects. So let's talk about those. The music is actually fine. It isn't the most amazing soundtrack, but it does fill the role of atmosphere building quite well. Then there are the sound effects, which, to be honest, were a bit of a disappointment. It's the same problem as with the graphics. They just could have used a bit more care. And the last part of the review is the performance. And obviously, this thing could run on a toaster, so don't worry about that. And I haven't encountered any bugs or crashes either. So, in conclusion, Aura of Worlds is a decent action platformer. Not the greatest one out there, but it is competent in what it tries to do. I hope the devs take a slight look at the health pools of the enemies and lower them a bit, but otherwise, if you like action platformers, Aura of Worlds is a decent choice for the price of $10. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you liked the review, and if you did, please consider giving us a thumbs up here on YouTube and subscribing to the channel. And comment if you have something you would like to add. See you guys later with more gaming content.